Rain hammered the cottage roof like gunfire. A baby's cry pierced the night. Cindy Miller froze in the doorway, her breath sharp in her throat. He was back.
We need to talk.
You shouldn't be here.
He stepped closer, water dripping from his coat, eyes dark and wild.
You think you can just take my child and play house with your rich boyfriend?
Zoe whimpered in her cradle. Cindy shifted to block his view, voice trembling but firm.
You left us, Ashley.
And now I'm back to fix what you ruined.
Then, headlights sliced through the rain. A black Mercedes pulled up hard, tires spraying gravel. Josh Henderson stepped out, coat flaring, expression cold as the storm around him.
So this is him, the savior.
Leave, now.
Or what?
Or I make sure you can't come back.
For a heartbeat, no one moved. Thunder cracked, Zoe cried, and Cindy stood between the two men who changed her life. Then Ashley backed away, muttering, "This isn't over." The taillights vanished into the storm, leaving silence and the smell of rain and fear. And as thunder rolled over the sea, Cindy realized this wasn't just a fight for love. It was a fight for survival. Cindy.
3 weeks. 3 weeks to prove I'm not a terrible mother who's unfit to raise her own child.
We'll fight this. My lawyers are already preparing.
What if the judge thinks he's right? That I'm some kind of gold digger?
Then the judge would be wrong, and we'll prove it.
The sound of a car in the driveway made them both look up. Through the window, Cindy saw a sleek black Audi pulling up beside Josh's Mercedes. A woman emerged. If you're still watching, it means you are with us. Thank you. Please sit back, relax. This will be worth every second of your time. Please drop a comment. Let's know what you think about Cindy Miller's story. Let me go straight into the story. Meet Cindy Miller, the woman whose husband walked away at the worst possible time. While she was in labor, he emptied their joint account and vanished. Then there's Josh Henderson, the billionaire who showed up for something entirely different, but ended up saving a mother and her newborn. Now he's caught between duty and desire. And finally, Ashley Cole, the deadbeat husband who thought he could walk away and walk back anytime he pleased. But this time, his choices have consequences. The storm battered St. Nicholas Hospital like a fist, rattling windows and sending rain down in sheets. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered, nurses moved with urgent purpose, and a squeeze of thunder shook the building's bones. In a delivery room, Cindy Miller clutched the metal rail of her bed as another contraction ripped through her. Sweat slicked her dark skin. Fear and pain sharpened her voice. "Ashley!" she cried, searching the room for the man who should have been beside her. "Ashley, please!" But Ashley Cole was pacing by the window, his cell phone glued to his ear and a businesslike whisper on his lips. Cindy watched, stunned, as her husband paced through the worst night in decades and spoke of quotas and deals. The baby was coming fast. Monitors showed the heart struggling. Emergency lights stuttered as the hospital's generators strained. Nurses bustled, faces drawn. "Cindy, we need to prep for a possible C-section," Dr. Martinez said, voice tight. "The baby's heart rate is dropping." Ashley's face went white. "Surgery?" he stammered. "But I have a meeting tomorrow." The doctor's stare left no room for negotiation. "Your wife needs you now." Ashley's eyes flicked between his wife and his buzzing phone. I need to take this call." He fumbled, made excuse after excuse. When Cindy begged him not to go, he backed toward the door and lied he'd moved the car to higher ground. He was gone before the lie had even finished. The betrayal cleaved Cindy's chest. The man who had vowed to love her in sickness and health abandoned her at the most terrifying hour. Her breath came ragged. Dr. Martinez tried to ground her, to steer her attention to the baby, but the room pulsed with chaos. Then the doors slammed open. A tall stranger stood in the doorway, rain streaming from his dark hair, his suit soaked but unbowed. Josh Henderson had arrived at the hospital on other business. Henderson Maritime's emergency power trucks had been sent when the hospital's generator failed. But what he found in the lobby repelled him. A man fussing about paint jobs while his wife screamed in labor. He moved through the rain into the room with an authority that cleared a path. Nurses stepped aside. "Ma'am," he said, steady and low. He took Cindy's trembling hand in both of his and anchored her. His palms were calloused, his grip surprising in its gentleness. His gray eyes were kind and certain. "You're mine now. I'm not leaving you." It sounded like a vow. Cindy whispered that she didn't even know him, and he replied simply, "You will." He turned to Dr. Martinez and asked what the patient needed. "We need to get this baby out safely," she said. Josh never released Cindy's hand. He instructed her to breathe, slow and even, like riding out waves. The storm howled outside, but inside that small room his calm became a harbor. When the moment arrived, Cindy pushed with everything she had. The team moved in rhythm. "She's crowning," Dr. Martinez called. One final heave and the baby slipped into the world. Small, red, fierce. Josh's voice broke as he whispered, "She's perfect." He was crying as he handed the infant through the scrubbed hands of the nurses. Cindy, exhausted and trembling, watched the stranger who had stayed when her husband had fled. Everything had shifted in that hour. 3 days after the storm-riddled birth, reality hit like cold water. Cindy opened the refrigerator and found little but a nearly expired carton of milk and dubious leftovers. A note on the counter told the story. Ashley had cleaned out their joint account and disappeared. Her voice shook as she cursed quietly, then stilled in shame at her own words. She'd been abandoned during labor and robbed while she recovered. The knock at the door brought Sarah, Cindy's blunt, no-nonsense friend from St. Nicholas, a pediatric nurse who carried casseroles and impossible cheer. Sarah stormed in with an armful of food and a fury that could cut steel. When Cindy told the whole sordid tale, Ashley's flight, the emptied accounts, the looming bills, Sarah exploded in anger for her, then pivoted into action. "What about that man? The one who stayed with you during labor?" she asked. The maternity ward had all been talking about him. A shipping magnate who'd driven through the storm to deliver equipment and then stayed. Cindy protested she couldn't show up uninvited at a millionaire's office with a baby, but Sarah would have none of it. "You're thanking him," she said, "not begging." With no plan beyond Sarah's blunt push, Cindy found herself at the glossy glass offices of Henderson Maritime. She entered feeling every thread of her second-hand clothes. Yes, Josh emerged from a private elevator, clean and composed. He greeted them with the same careful steadiness he'd shown in that delivery room, and accepted Cindy's thanks like a man surprised to be needed. When he lifted the baby, Zoe, his large hands were gentle. He smiled and told Cindy the girl looked like her mother. He surprised her further. His personal assistant had quit. He needed honest, competent help managing his life. Could she work for him? He offered legitimate employment, flexible hours that would allow Zoe to come along, and a small cottage on his estate as part of the compensation. Cindy recoiled at first, the pride of a woman whose world had collapsed flaring. But Josh was sincere. He'd watched her bring life into the world with courage. He'd not been able to stop thinking about her. It sounded incredible and impossible. A job, a roof, safety, not charity, he insisted, but opportunity. Cindy swallowed her pride. For Zoe's sake, she accepted. Her life walked suddenly from squalor into a magazine-worthy cottage on Josh's property. Whitewashed walls, exposed beams, a nursery painted and furnished before she'd even moved in. Josh's kindness came bundled with quiet expectations and a steady rhythm. Morning coffee delivered at 7:30, small encouragements, and work that suited her head for organization. She learned to manage his calendar, vet contracts, sort his correspondence. In return, he asked for only competency, and sometimes for her presence. 6 weeks in, the cottage felt like shelter and menace all at once. Zoe blossomed, curious, alert, fearless. Cindy found herself laughing at small things again. She and Josh worked side by side. Mornings slid into comfortable ritual. He asked her to attend a charity gala as his date. She hesitated, then agreed. A seed of something warm took root between them, fragile and hush quiet. Weeks taught them small mercies. Cindy learned the rhythms of Josh's world. The estate, the lighthouses, the Port Authority briefings. Josh revealed slivers of himself. A childhood with family photographs, an old house built by his great-grandfather, a father and mother lost at sea in a sudden storm when he was 22. He spoke of the regret of words unsaid. His vulnerability stripped the armor of the powerful man the town whispered about. Cindy listened, touched and surprised at how much his grief mirrored her own wary tenderness. Their closeness grew gently, sometimes awkwardly, always edged by the knowledge that Josh occupied a world far removed from Cindy's past. He fretted over her, and she hid old wounds. Yet between managing his correspondence and feeding Zoe, between small jokes and silent looks across the kitchen table, something like trust grew. A knock shattered a soft morning. Cindy checked the peephole and watched her past step onto her porch. Ashley Cole, unkempt and desperate. He tried to bargain for his place back in their life, blaming panic and fear for his abandonment. He offered apologies and then, when the conversation shifted, threats and legal posture. "You have to understand," he wheedled. "The whole town's been saying things. She's with a millionaire now. She's slipped into a life of sin." He meant leverage. He meant to stir the town against her. He threatened custody and hinted at lawyers with influence. Cindy's hands shook. Zoe fussed in her bouncy seat. Josh arrived, faster than she expected, stepping from his black Mercedes with the composure of someone used to solving problems. He stood between Cindy and Ashley like a wall. Where Ashley tried to belittle, Josh spoke low and immovable. "You have 10 seconds to get in your car and drive away," he warned. The threat was quiet and certain. Ashley retreated, promising revenge and legal action, then drove off into the... After he left, Cindy unhooked the chain and let Josh inside. He offered to call his lawyer. He wanted to protect them. The hush after the confrontation was fragile. Cindy's mind churned with the fear that Ashley's legal threats would gain traction. Had her association with Josh become the very ammunition Ashley sought? They agreed, together, to face it. "No more keeping things from each other," Josh said. "We're in this together." "Together," Cindy repeated, feeling the word as both hope and promise. War has a way of revealing exactly who stands with you when the world turns dark and who disappears into shadows, the moment things become difficult. The manila envelope arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who barely looked old enough to drive, let alone destroy someone's life. Cindy signed for it with trembling hands, already knowing what it contained before she tore it open in the privacy of her cottage kitchen. "Petition for emergency custody hearing," she read aloud, voice hollow in the sudden silence. Cole versus Miller. The papers detailed Ashley's claims in cold clinical language that made Cindy's stomach turn. He painted himself as a reformed man who'd made mistakes, but was now ready to take responsibility for his daughter. Meanwhile, Cindy was portrayed as an unstable woman who'd shacked up with a wealthy man mere weeks after giving birth, creating an inappropriate and potentially dangerous environment for an innocent child. The worst part was how some of it sounded almost reasonable when stripped of context. Yes, she was living on Josh's property. Yes, their relationship had developed quickly. Yes, she was dependent on him financially. When presented without the full story, Ashley's abandonment, Josh's kindness, the genuine love that had grown between them, it could look exactly like what Ashley was claiming it was. Cindy was still staring at the papers when Josh arrived for their morning coffee, taking one look at her face and immediately crossing to her side. "What is it?" he asked, then saw the legal documents scattered across the table. His expression darkened as he read, jaw tightening with each paragraph. "Emergency hearing," he said grimly. "He's not wasting any time." 3 weeks, Cindy whispered. 3 weeks to prove I'm not a terrible mother who's unfit to raise her own child." Josh pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she fought back tears. "We'll fight this," he said firmly. "My lawyers are already preparing. This is just Ashley's opening move, not his winning one." "What if they believe him?" Cindy asked against Josh's chest. "What if the judge thinks he's right? That I'm some kind of gold digger who's putting her own selfish desires before her child's welfare?"
Then the judge would be wrong, Josh said simply. And we'll prove it. The sound of a car in the driveway made them both look up. Through the window, Cindy saw a sleek black Audi pulling up beside Josh's Mercedes. A woman emerged from the driver.
Tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in the kind of effortless elegance that money could buy. "Who is that?" Cindy asked, though something about the woman's confident stride toward the cottage made her stomach clench with dread. Josh's expression had gone carefully neutral. "That would be Samantha Pease, my former fiancé." Cindy felt the blood drain from her face. "Your former fiancé? The one you didn't mention you had? It ended 3 years ago," Josh said quickly. "I have no idea why she's here." Samantha's knock was crisp and authoritative. Josh opened the door, body language tense, as he faced the woman who'd once planned to marry him. "Hello, Josh," Samantha said, voice cultured and smooth. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." She was beautiful in the way that only serious money could create. Perfect blonde hair that probably cost more to maintain than Cindy made in a month. Flawless skin. Designer clothes that fit like they'd been made specifically for her body, which they probably had been. "What do you want?" Josh asked, without inviting her in. "I heard about your situation," Samantha said, gaze moving past Josh to where Cindy stood holding Zoe. "I thought you might appreciate some friendly advice." "I don't need advice," Josh replied coolly. "Perhaps not, but she might." Samantha's smile was razor sharp as she focused on Cindy. "You must be Cindy. I've heard so much about you." Cindy lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated, despite feeling completely outclassed. "All good things, I hope." Samantha laughed, the sound like expensive crystal breaking. "Oh, my dear, I'm sure you're lovely. But love and suitability aren't always the same thing, are they?" "What's that supposed to mean?" Cindy asked, though she was beginning to understand exactly what this woman was doing here. "I've been in Europe for the past few months," Samantha continued, stepping into the cottage without invitation. "But news travels even across the Atlantic. Josh Henderson, one of Cabrook's most eligible bachelors, involved with a woman who's still technically married to another man, a woman with a newborn baby and financial problems. The timing is unfortunate. The timing is perfect," Josh said firmly, moving to stand beside Cindy. "And my personal life is none of your concern." "Of course it is," Samantha replied, examining the cottage's modest interior with barely concealed disdain. "Your reputation affects the entire social fabric of this community. And right now, people are 3 nights talking." "Let them talk," Cindy said, finding her voice despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Oh, I'm sure you'd like that," Samantha said with false sweetness. "But Josh's reputation is built on more than just money, dear. It's built on respectability, on making appropriate choices, on understanding the social dynamics that keep communities like this functioning." She turned back to Josh, expression becoming more serious. "There's going to be a custody hearing. The entire town will be watching to see how this plays out. Do you really want to be associated with that kind of drama?" "The drama wasn't created by Cindy," Josh said coldly. "It was created by her ex-husband, who abandoned his family and is now trying to manipulate the situation for his own gain." "Perhaps," Samantha said, "but the optics are terrible. A wealthy man, a poor single mother, a custody battle that will inevitably involve questions about morality and appropriate behavior. It's going to be messy, Josh. Very messy." Cindy felt sick. Everything Samantha was saying echoed her own worst fears about how this situation might be perceived. "What do you want, Samantha?" Josh asked again, patience clearly wearing thin. "I want to help," Samantha said smoothly. "Both of you, Cindy, you clearly care about Josh, and you certainly don't want to see his reputation damaged because of your circumstances. The solution is simple. Step back. Let Josh provide for you and your daughter financially if he insists, but don't drag him into a public custody battle that could damage everything he's worked to build." "You want me to leave him?" Cindy said flatly. "I want you to do what's best for everyone involved," Samantha corrected, "including your daughter. Do you really want her growing up with the shadow of this scandal hanging over her, with people always whispering about how her mother trapped a wealthy man?" "That's enough," Josh said sharply. "Cindy isn't trapping anyone, and she's not going anywhere." Samantha sighed as if dealing with particularly stubborn children. "Josh, be reasonable. You've known this woman for what, 2 months? And in that time she's gone from being a married, pregnant woman to a divorced single mother living in your cottage. The progression is rapid. The progression is none of your business, Josh replied. Everything about you is my business, Samantha said, mask of politeness finally slipping. Do you think 3 years together meant nothing? Do you think I'm going to stand by and watch you destroy yourself? It's over some infatuation with a woman who needs rescuing? I don't need rescuing, Cindy said quietly, but her voice carried steel. And I'm not an infatuation. Samantha turned to her with genuine curiosity. Aren't you? Tell me, Cindy, what exactly do you bring to this relationship besides problems? Besides the need for financial support and legal protection? The question hit Cindy like a physical blow, not because it was cruel, but because it voiced the doubts that had been whispering in the back of her mind since Ashley's visit. I bring love, Cindy said simply. I bring honesty and loyalty, and the kind of devotion that doesn't disappear the moment things get difficult. How refreshing, Samantha said dryly. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When Josh realizes that love doesn't compensate for social incompatibility? When the custody battle gets ugly and expensive and embarrassing? When people start avoiding him because his association with you makes them uncomfortable? That won't happen, Josh said firmly. But Cindy could hear uncertainty underneath his confidence. Won't it? Samantha challenged. You're already being talked about, Josh. The Sheffields canceled their dinner invitation last week. The Bernards didn't invite you to their anniversary party. People are watching this situation, waiting to see how it plays out. Cindy felt the walls closing in around her. She'd known this was too good to be true, had known that fairy tales didn't happen to women like her, but she'd allowed herself to hope anyway. And now that hope was being systematically dismantled by a woman who clearly knew exactly which buttons to push. I should go, Cindy said quietly, voice barely audible. What? Josh turned to her in shock. Cindy, no, don't let her get to you. She's right, Cindy said, tears burning her eyes about all of it. The timing, the optics, the way this must look to everyone else. I'm going to damage your reputation, your business, your entire life. You're not damaging anything, Josh said desperately. Samantha doesn't speak for this community, and she certainly doesn't speak for me. But Cindy could see it in his eyes, the first seeds of doubt that Samantha had planted. And she knew that once those seeds took root, they would grow until they choked out everything beautiful between them. The battle lines had been drawn, and Cindy was beginning to realize she might be fighting a war she couldn't win. Sometimes, the only way to discover what you're truly fighting for is to risk losing everything, including your own life. 3 weeks had passed since Samantha's visit, and Cindy felt like she was suffocating. She'd moved back to her cottage and stopped working for Josh, though she remained on his property for Zoe's sake. She was avoiding him completely, and Josh was devastated, but respecting her choice. The distance between them felt like an ocean neither knew how to cross. The weather matched Cindy's mood, gray, oppressive, with storm clouds gathering on the horizon like an omen. The local news had been warning about a massive storm system approaching Seabrook, possibly the worst in decades. Most residents were battening down the hatches, stocking up on supplies, and preparing to ride it out. But as Cindy stood at her cottage window, watching the first drops of rain begin to fall, her mind wasn't on the weather. It was on the custody hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. Ashley's lawyer had been relentless, painting her as an unfit mother living an immoral lifestyle. Meanwhile, Josh's legal team had worked tirelessly to defend her, but Cindy could see the strain it was putting on him. Samantha's words echoed in her mind constantly. When people start avoiding him because his association with you makes them uncomfortable. And it was true. Cindy had noticed the way some of Josh's business associates had grown distant, the invitations that had stopped coming, the whispered conversations that ceased when she entered a room. She was destroying the man she loved, and she didn't know how to stop it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Storm's getting bad. You and Zoe should come stay with me tonight. Cindy looked down at Zoe, who was sleeping peacefully in her crib, oblivious to the chaos surrounding her young life. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe it would be safer to leave the cottage to put some distance between herself and Josh before she caused him any more damage. But before she could respond, another text appeared, this one from Nick, Josh's estate manager. Cindy, I'm worried about Josh. He took his sailboat out an hour ago despite the storm warnings. He's not answering his radio. Cindy's blood turned to ice. She ran to the window facing the harbor and could barely make out a small shape on the churning water through the sheets of rain. Josh's sailboat was out there, getting battered by waves that seemed to grow larger by the minute. No, 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 Cindy whispered, grabbing her phone and dialing Josh's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again and again, panic rising in her throat like bile. This was her fault. Josh was out there in that storm because of her, because she'd pushed him away, because she'd let Samantha's poisonous words convince her that loving him was selfish. And now he might die because she'd been too much of a coward to fight for what they had. Cindy didn't hesitate. She bundled Zoe into her car seat, grabbed her keys, and ran through the driving rain to her car. She had to get to the marina, had to do something to help bring Josh home. The harbor was chaos. Coast Guard boats were preparing to launch rescue operations, and Cindy could see Nick coordinating with the maritime authorities. The older man's face was pale with worry as he spotted Cindy running toward them with Zoe. "Any word?" Cindy shouted over the howling wind. "He's not responding to radio calls," Nick shouted back. "The Coast Guard is going out to look for him, but in this weather." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew how dangerous the conditions were. Cindy stared out at the harbor, trying to spot Josh's boat through the storm, her heart hammering against her ribs. "This is my fault," she said, the words torn away by the wind. "What?" Nick leaned closer to hear her. "This is my fault," Cindy repeated louder. "He's out there because of me, because I've been avoiding him, because I let that Samantha convince me that I was bad for him." Nick's expression softened despite the chaos around them. "Honey, Josh makes his own choices. He's been sailing these waters since he was a boy. He knows what he's doing." But Cindy could see the worry in the older man's eyes, could hear the doubt in his voice. The storm was getting worse by the minute, and even experienced sailors could be overwhelmed by nature's fury. A Coast Guard officer approached them, his face grim. "We've spotted a sailboat about 3 miles out, but we can't tell if it's his. The visibility is too poor. We're launching a rescue boat now." Cindy watched the Coast Guard vessel disappear into the storm, feeling helpless and terrified. She should be out there with them. She should be doing something other than standing on the dock while the man she loved fought for his life. "I need to radio him," she said suddenly, turning to Nick. "Can I use the maritime radio in Josh's office?" Nick nodded, leading Cindy and Zoe quickly to the harbor master's building, where Josh kept a small office. The radio crackled with static and emergency communications, but Cindy managed to find the right frequency. "Josh, this is Cindy," she said into the microphone, her voice shaking. "Please respond. Please come home." Static. She tried again. "Josh, I know you can hear me. I know you're angry and hurt, and I know this is my fault, but please, please don't do this. Zoe needs you. I need you." More static, but then faintly, a voice broke through the interference. "Cindy." Josh's voice was barely audible over the storm noise, but it was him. "Josh. Oh, thank God. Are you okay? Where are you?" "About 2 miles southeast of the harbor," he replied, his voice strained. "Boats taking on water, engines out. I'm trying to get back on sail power alone, but the wind." The radio cut out, leaving only static. Cindy felt her world tilt on its axis. He was in real danger out there, and it was because of her, because she'd pushed him away instead of fighting for their love. "Josh," she called into the radio. "Josh, can you hear me?" Nothing but static for several long minutes, and then his voice came through again, weaker this time. "Cindy, I need you to know something in case I don't make it back." "Don't you dare," Cindy said fiercely. "Don't you dare talk like that. You're coming home. You're coming home to us. I love you." Josh's voice crackled through the static. "I love you and Zoe more than my own life. I went out here because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you, of watching you slip away because of what other people think." Cindy was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she gripped the radio microphone. "I love you too. I've been an idiot. I let Samantha get into my head, let her convince me that I wasn't good enough for you. But I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I just want you to come home. The Coast Guard is coming for you," she continued. "Just hold on. Please, just hold on." "Cindy," Josh's voice was getting fainter. "If something happens to me, I want you to know that these past few months with you and Zoe have been the best of my life. You didn't ruin anything. You saved me. You saved me first," Cindy whispered, but she wasn't sure if he could hear her anymore. The radio went dead. Cindy stared at it for a moment, then handed Zoe to Nick and ran back outside into the storm. She could see lights in the distance, the Coast Guard vessel searching the churning waters. Other boats had joined the search, despite the dangerous conditions. The entire maritime community was looking for Josh. Cindy stood on the dock, rain soaking through her clothes, wind whipping her hair across her face, and she prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. She prayed to whoever might be listening that Josh would make it home safely. She prayed that she'd get the chance to tell him how much he meant to her, how sorry she was for pushing him away, how ready she was to fight for their love, no matter what anyone else thought. In the distance, she saw a light, a faint beacon cutting through the storm. It was getting closer, and Cindy held her breath as the shape of a boat became visible through the rain and spray. It was the Coast Guard vessel, and they were towing something behind them. A sailboat. Josh's sailboat. Cindy ran toward the approaching boats, her heart in her throat. Was he alive? Was he hurt? She couldn't see clearly through the storm, but as the boats drew closer to the dock, she could make out a figure sitting in the Coast Guard vessel. Josh. He was wrapped in a blanket, clearly exhausted and probably hypothermic. But he was alive. He was alive, and he was coming home. As soon as the Coast Guard boat tied up to the dock, Cindy was there, not caring about protocol or safety. Josh looked up and saw her, and despite his exhausted state, his face lit up with relief and love. "Cindy," he said, his voice. "You idiot," she said, launching herself into his arms, despite the Coast Guard officer's protests about medical checks. "You absolute idiot. Don't you ever scare me like that again." Josh held her tight, and Cindy could feel him shaking from cold, from exhaustion, from emotion. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her hair. "I'm so sorry. I just couldn't stand the thought of losing you." "You're not going to lose me," Cindy said fiercely. "I don't care what Samantha thinks, or what the town thinks, or what anyone thinks. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to fight this custody battle together, and we're going to win. And we're going to build the life we want regardless of what anyone else says." Josh pulled back to look at her, his gray eyes intense despite his exhaustion. "Are you sure? Because it's going to be hard. Ashley and his lawyers aren't going to give up easily." "I'm sure," Cindy said without hesitation. "I love you, Josh Henderson, and I'm done being afraid of that." As the paramedics checked Josh over and Nick fussed over Zoe, Cindy stood on the dock, watching the storm begin to calm. The worst of it had passed, leaving the air clean and fresh with possibility. Tomorrow they would face the custody hearing. Tomorrow they would stand together in front of a judge and fight for their right to be a family. And whatever happened, they would face it together. Because some things were worth fighting for, and their love was definitely one of them.